Hi everyone, we are live and we're starting our webinar. And the topic of today's conversation will be unlocking liquidity for founders and investors. We will talk about business development, carve-outs, and M&A readiness for startups and for portfolios of family offices. And today I'm here together with three wonderful experts. And I want to start by introducing them one on one. And Marcus, probably you can start.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Genia, and congratulations on your excellent work here at Multipliers. Folks, it's a pleasure to be here and to be on a panel with tremendous talent like Mithi and Evgeny. I am Marcus Wang, and I'm a partner at Coda Global Ventures, where we partner with PE and VC firms to leverage cross-border synergies to unlock liquidity and value creation for their portfolio companies through expansion into global markets, in particular, the U.S. market. At Coda, we've worked with innovators in AI and B2B SaaS, as well as industry giants and cross-border expansion, including the likes of AstraZeneca, IKEA, Remy Martin, Under Armour, Northrop Grumman, Paramount, Ferrero, and GlaxoSmithKline. And we've leveraged cross-border expansion to transform their enterprise value. And more than strategy, we embed with our clients and execute end-to-end from regulatory compliance to operational readiness to full-scale market launch. Now, I got my undergraduate degree at Harvard. I practiced corporate law at DLA Piper in New York. I founded and exited Zytogen Global Genetics Institute, a biotech company. I led economic development for county level government in the state of Maryland, where I'm also a healthcare commissioner. And I previously led Under Armour's $80 million entry into the China market. And my Under Armour experience taught me something crucial. Your home market is not your only market. And the right international expansion can transform a business that's worth millions into a business that's worth billions.
Thank you, Marcus. I think it would be very hard to compete with you, but yes, I really want to hear from Evgeny.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to. That was very impressive. So I'm an engineer by training, applied physics, advanced and computer science, but then I wasted 10 years of my life in investment banking, special situations and mergers and acquisitions. So that wasn't the thing that I dreamt about when I was studying science. So I always was looking to how to get back to tech. So in 2018, I joined this deep tech startup that I originally helped to fund. And with this startup, we relocated the company to Silicon Valley, to San Francisco. We raised a little bit of capital. We experimented with the product. We went through acceleration. But long story short, we failed to build a product. We had like a consulting service in very niche area. So that also wasn't like what I dreamt about. So I quite quickly found my way back to investment side. Originally, I started to help companies relocate to the Valley. And we developed a couple of playbooks, how to do that properly, how to do that quickly. All of them at a certain point need to fundraise. So I started to invest with my partners. So we started to invest small checks, assemble syndicates around that. Long story short, again, our thesis is deep tech. We invest in small concentrated portfolio because we like to get involved if our companies need help. And we help with strategy, special situation, financing, and exits. We already have some successes in our portfolio. To date, we invested like in 13 companies, approximately 10 million. And from that, because we are very involved, naturally grew advisory service for our portfolio companies that we later started to use to help our friends, other founders and boards and investors. And that grew into like naturally, organically into advisory service. So right now I'm early stage deep tech and M&A in special situations for larger, more mature companies.
Great. And then Mithi, it's your turn.
Great. It's hard to go after these two guys. They're real men in the arena. So background is mostly as an operator in the science and technology space. I had a first company, which is an agricultural biotech company in the US, raised about $61 million, built it, scaled it, exited. And then I focused on building an applied AI company with a professor out of Oxford. And after 2 years of operation, we exited. We're selling into two markets, reproductive medicine and cardiovascular. And now I spend my time mostly acting on behalf of institutional investors and boards on a number of things. One is the consolidations and carve-outs, and also how to accelerate go-to-market strategies for two reasons. One is to be able to unlock liquidity, and second of all, the either subsequent rounds of funding or timely exits. And currently, I'm having two hats. One is I started a company out of Cambridge, toenail professors. It's a first-in-class therapeutic for stroke, so it's spinning out intellectual property to be able to leverage liquidity. And the other one is actually on the other side, consolidating three portfolio companies for a large biomedtech fund. And that also involves putting together those three companies together. They've spent about 200 million of their own funding. And now the other part is actually carving out some of their non-core assets out of that portfolio. And that's a publicly listed play.
Thank you very much. Just to remind to our listeners that that will be 1 hour webinar, and you're very welcome to ask questions. You can send them in the chat. I would be happy if you can also name the country where are you located right now or where you're working. And also the first part will be my questions to the panelists for half an hour. And then after that, I will open it to Q&A session to all participants. And also just want to remind that we are recording this session, and then you can watch it live later as many times as you want. And with this, I also want to mention that I am a founder of Multipliers company. We are based in Dubai, and the main goal is to raise capital for startups and for venture capital funds. We're very connected with local ecosystem, with family offices, venture capital funds, and also angels. And we're helping companies to enter GCC market. And I see that Eric from United States, my friend GP, is also joining us. Okay, great. Let's start with discussing the problem. And I want first, Marcus, you to describe how do you see the problem? Why we're actually here today? And what is the problem usually family offices see when they try to sell their portfolio companies or try to work with them?
Well, thank you, Jenny. And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. They're leaving a lot of value on the table. They're leaving a lot of value unrealized or unlocked. And they have to go into the international market. And I'll tell you what was a sort of come to Jesus moment for me was the moment I literally set foot outside the United States was a moment I understood that international expansion is a key to growth. And in fact, I actually saw a literal sign from above. It was a neon lit sign in red and white, and it had three magic words: Kentucky Fried Chicken, or more accurately, 肯德基. See, I was born and raised in Baltimore, though I'm Chinese by blood. Now, I know fried chicken, and I grew up loving Kentucky Fried Chicken. But Kentucky Fried Chicken as a brand in America has long since crashed to earth like a chicken trying to fly. It has a very down market reputation. It's not where the upwardly mobile or trendy person goes to eat. You don't take your family there for a celebration. Its menu is perceived as unhealthy. It's a polar opposite of aspirational. I'm not trying to short sell them here. They have repeatedly struggled and failed to reset their brand perception in the United States. Their sales are sluggish. They continue to decline. But in China, Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, rules the roost, and pun intended. They are the dominant Western fast food player in China. They've adapted their menu with local flavors, positioned themselves as a family-friendly, slightly upscale brand. And at its peak, China contributed nearly half of Yum Brand's revenue, prompting a spin-off of Yum China to focus on the market. And how did they do it? Local partners, first mover advantage, working with the tourism bureau, focusing on localization, operational autonomy, celebrity partnerships, and an emphasis on aspirational values like sustainability, sustainable fried chicken. Imagine that. And that's when it clicked for me. Your home market is not your only market. When you translate your appeal for global markets, you can transform a sow's ear into a silk purse, or in this case, into a chicken that truly lays golden eggs. And over time, it became evident to me that investors, including family offices and private equity firms, were inadvertently overlooking and leaving that substantial value on the table. They would acquire exceptional companies with strong performance in Europe or Asia or North America, and then consistently fail to unlock their global runway and missing out on exponential growth opportunities. That observation is actually the core mission of what we do, because we've seen consistently how portfolio companies can fundamentally reshape their entire investment thesis by partnering with us to access new markets that were previously considered invisible. It's not just about diversifying your revenue streams. It's about completely reevaluating and re-rating the entire enterprise value. So if you're in one market and you encounter growth ceilings, when you expand internationally, especially in large and complex and high opportunity markets like the United States, you're signaling to potential acquirers and partners that there is a broader total addressable market out there. There's a more robust and diversified business model out there. And that directly influences the valuation multiples that you can command upon exit, however that exit might be affected. And that's going to shift the perception from your portco from a regionally confined asset to a globally scalable platform. And so the understanding here is the true opportunity lies not just in recognizing the potential, but in comprehending, effectively mitigating that operational friction that goes across borders that prevents other firms from seizing it, and you can seize that opportunity for yourselves.
Marcus, do you think that founders usually think that their potential market is the market where they grow up? Let's say if you're American, then probably you're building business in America, and you never even think to build a business in China. Or how does this work?
You're absolutely right. I think people tend to go with what they're familiar with. They tend to stay in their lane. They're very familiar with a certain market. They say, you know what, there's so much value left to be unlocked in this market. Let's focus on that first. And the international is not a need to have, it's a nice to have. And I'm telling people here in the UK, where I'm located, I said, listen, coming to America is not just a great Eddie Murphy movie. Coming to America may be the best growth strategy for your company. And in response, I see a question about industry sectors. It absolutely applies to medtech, to life sciences, and biotech. We work with so many companies in that sector. That's my background. And frankly, I think that when you're talking about companies that have IP that is very focused on tech, that is very much software, that is very much intellectual property based, that you are asset light and tech heavy, it's much easier to cross borders. You have a lot of highly regulated industries. MedTech is one of those very highly regulated industries. And we're taking companies in America right now through the FDA process and everything, where they can achieve, I think, very soon, it's going to be 90% of their values coming from the United States.
Great. Let's move to Evgeny. And my question is that how do you help technical founders to shift from IP-centric to outcome-centric storytelling?
That's a pretty hard question. Sometimes it doesn't work. you can help it. But let me take a step back. What Marcus was saying, geographical arbitrage is actually very interesting. In deep tech specifically, which is my game, we also apply that. And we are in the UK, I'm in the UK, Missy in the UK. And there's like very clear, the academia here is great. And there's a lot of technologies produced here. But the business environment right now is not conducive to big outcomes, I should say. So about like the general topic of the discussion, and my game is deep tech. In deep tech, the name of the game is strategic acquisition. And the problem in deep tech is that a lot of people, they apply the playbooks that developed for broader VC. And broader VC, power law distribution, like we will invest in 30 companies, one outlier will return the fund. And in deep tech, it's like 17 times more likely to cash out through M&A. And execution with M&A in mind is completely different. So if you, from the get-go, if you envision that you're going to sell the company, everything should be structured around that. So the way we try to play this game is we try to basically look at the problem a bit more broadly. So we find and also we like deep tech because I'm a bad product person. Because I can assess the value of the technology objectively, and it's about numbers because the buyers are typically B2B companies, so you can objectively assess the utility of what was created. And then if you have a broader aperture, if you have like a broader understanding of economic environment, you can find a place where this technology could be useful. And we frame the problem from academia to wide adoption quickly. And everyone is hung up on the idea of like having a company, long-term, standalone company. And it's oftentimes not viable. You can't build like a stable business if you just have like a very cool thing that needed somewhere in like automotive supply chain. And the problem is that when you're hung up on this idea to be a company, you fail because it takes years to just get adopted in this convoluted supply chains in the industry. So the way we approach this is you can create a company, to quickly validate the value of what you have created. So you establish initial customers, partnerships, but you have the M&A in mind. And tech M&A, they don't happen out of the blue. So it's either 95% that will be your partners or initial customers. And these conversations, they need to be had like very early about the potential trajectory. So once you establish the credibility, you establish the value of what you have created, your path to widespread adoption could be strategic partnership and then acquisition. And that could be done much quicker. And unfortunately, a lot of companies, especially playing in deep tech, they're trying to play the game of like, we will become like a billion-dollar huge company. And they're losing money. They're losing the moments when they had an opportunity to sell. Then when they had an opportunity to sell properly, realizing the value of what was created. And then they're already mature. They're being valued at multipliers applied to companies that are stable, and it's underwhelming outcome for founders and investors. So we try to approach deep tech specifically through this lens. That won't work for everyone, but this is actually that works really well in medical devices and pharma. So we're not inventing anything new. We're just applying this to a broad deep tech. This is how we see the topic of the conversation today.
Interesting. I will definitely ask you some questions regarding use cases a little bit later. And let's move to Miti right now, because I really want to understand how can you, and probably you can walk us through a time when a vertical pivot unlocked unexpected commercial traction in companies.
Yeah, actually, there's one that is quite obvious where both Evgeny and Marcus have helped me. We've collectively worked together. It's Hercules AI. It's a San Francisco-based company. It was built by a phenomenal Israeli founder called Alex Babin. So what they do is back office AI optimization. They've been around for about 15 years now. Extremely sharp team, strong commercial traction, very sticky revenue. Renewal rate has been 100% for the last few years. And what we've done actually is, rather than a pivot, is actually open their aperture to certain markets, specifically healthcare, where I have a lot of connectivity. And what we did is we actually allowed them to apply their LLM for a specific use case in healthcare. And Marcus, actually being a commissioner of the Maryland Healthcare Commission, has also helped with the public entry in the US. Additionally to which, we looked at hospitals in the US and other channel partners. So we've been able to handle about 20 million ARR that they're actually delivering on now, just by letting them execute on what they do. But we are investors in the company. And what I did is a really hands-on extension of the team, is to go there and hunt for new revenue sources. Obviously, I'm on the board of advisors, so that really helps. And now I think the team is really busy on the execution in the healthcare, which was not necessarily on the radar, but now it is. And that will be the inflection point for the next round of funding.
Great. I think that Evgeny, you probably also want to add something on this company because you also worked with them.
Yeah, I really like the company. It's they're very cool, and but to be absolutely frank, we don't need to overestimate our impact. The company is very professional. They know what they're doing. We invested having this thesis in mind that even if we just saw the technology, again applying the same principles that I highlighted, we saw that if we try to we understand the specific market, healthcare, and if we just apply this technology that we learned, and we did our technical due diligence, the most fun part for us. So we understood it could be applied here, and the value of this will help us to multiply without much detail our investment. So the whole thesis was that the company is already cool by itself, but we can help them add this additional thing to their portfolio. So and it seems like we can't say definitively at this point, but it seems like that was the right bet and the right move.
I've also heard that you worked with a company that made around $60,000 in revenue during first 5 or 7 years of its
Yes.
And then after you applied your magic they started generating or potentially generating millions of dollars.
Yeah,
Definitely.
this is one of my favorite cases. So again, we invested based on the in 2021. We've been the first investor who've done a very deep technical due diligence. So we looked at the technology. The company managed to develop the full stack tech that allows you to process sound on GPUs. And for anyone who knows what it is, it's a really complicated computer science problem. So it's like they needed to jump over the small river and they build a starship, something like that. So for a very minor use case, they build a very comprehensive technology. And when I looked at what they have created, they're like starting from assembler drivers, like NVIDIA level, like assembler level, coding like their own scheduler, their own library of mathematical methods. So that it was very clear that the application is very broad. So we did our due diligence, we invested a little bit of money, we introduced them to their seed investor, and we forgot about the company. Like we forgot because like it seemed like they're on the right track. And then like in 2 years, we've taken a look what's happening. And basically, company is in a crisis. They picked the wrong market as their initial market. They picked the wrong market, and also that could be like okay for deep tech company. Like they decided to go after the pro audio segment, and pro audio segment is pretty small, very slow, poor. Like path to market is very long. So but they decided to go after this market and then like to go after like more bigger markets like automotive, like I said. So but reality was that they burned all the money that they raised to go after pro audio. The idea was that they're gonna make 1 million top line with the first integrated product for B2B2C model. Didn't happen. So after all the distribution, discounts and everything, they got like 30K on their account. So it was pretty clear that it's not going to work. But because the founders, they are amazing technical people. They are just like world-class, best in what they do. But they kind of mismanaged expectations of investors, and no one was willing to believe in the company anymore, except me. So because I knew the value of the technology, because I understood it like several years ago pretty deeply. So we did like a seed plus round. We did like strategic overview of everything that they could apply their technology to. We like ranked all the potential applications based on like how fragmented is the market, how long is the path to market, like do they have bargaining power, is there like potential partner locks who will guard the market entry, etc. So we did like a half a year strategic overview, and we decided that we need to go after the automotive market. So, and the company, again, investors didn't want to support the company anymore because it was too long and burned a lot of cash and nothing is happening. But the value of what they created was like huge. It could be just, you just need like a little bit of push to apply it to a different industry and it will work. So we negotiated the seed plus round. It's taken a lot of time and effort, but we closed this at the beginning of this year. And once we started to apply that to automotive, we for the first time in the history of the company, we felt a market pull. Like it appears like everyone needs that. Everyone is dreaming about software-defined audio in automotive. The biggest disruptors right now in this industry, Chinese. We tried to sell it to European companies, and they're like, "Yeah, that's very interesting. We will apply that. We can retire all the DSP chips in the car. We can build like advanced noise suppression in the car." Just so you understand, because it might be a bit obscure, this technology, when you can process sound that quickly, with that much power, you can do active noise suppression. So I'm talking here, but on the first row, but on the back row, no one hears me because the sound is being actively suppressed. So you can have a conference call on your front row, but your kids can play cartoons on the back row. And that can only happen if you have advanced sound processing, you have advanced noise suppression. So only this company can do that because only they can process sound on GPUs. And that was the first product. So when we introduced this product and to the industry, everyone knew about these concepts, but no one could like process it that quickly. We felt the market pull. Europeans too slow, Chinese too fast. And right now we have like 5 active commercial negotiations already. We built a prototype that works, and it's like if everything goes smoothly, we will proceed to like appropriate round A early next year, because we will have proof of concept delivered with that gives us like distribution of more than 1 million cars, and 1 million cars means more than 20 million in revenue. So it's long, it's convoluted, but when you pick like the right market and you actually spend some time thinking about this, you're going through from like 30K to 30 million pretty quickly. But that's why I like deep tech, because when we invested, it was pretty obvious that there's many applications like that. But the problem is that sometimes you pick the wrong one, and if you mismanage expectations with your investors, you burn your chance, and that's it. And you basically burn your opportunity. And this is a pretty big problem.
Marcus, you wanted to comment something on what Evgeny
Oh,
just
no, Evgeny had some great points, and he's talking about China, and I think China is a very big part of the world and the world market right now. And it goes directly to what we were talking about earlier about geopolitical realities. They're shaping international expansion strategies and closing some doors and opening up new opportunities like never before. So if we look at, for example, the defense and critical infrastructure sectors. Now, European companies who possess proven technology or novel IP now have the opportunity like never before to access massive US government contracts. And that's largely driven by heightened supply chain security concerns regarding Chinese alternatives, because there's a lot of technology in China. It's so innovative, some of the best engineering, vertical integration, economies of scale, you name it. But in this political climate, the reality is a Chinese tech company is not getting within sniffing distance of a Department of Defense contract. And the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed by President Trump, adds $157 billion in defense spending. And that takes a total annual US military spending over $1 trillion. So at CODA, for example, we have an EU defense manufacturer. It's a NATO member, it's an ally. It's got innovative homeland security tech for the border. And that can now be positioned strategically to benefit from US reshoring initiatives, the newly juiced up budget, and the shift in geopolitical realities. And through CODA's established state level relationships and our embedded execution model, we're not able only to identify the firms that can successfully make the leap into the US market, but how. So for this company to facilitate market entry, to navigate regulatory compliance, to forge essential relationships, build the on-the-ground infrastructure, and execute the deals that lead to increased market share, reliable revenue, and explosive growth. And their European heritage, which they initially saw, frankly, as a potential barrier, has now become their biggest strategic advantage in the US market. Another thing I talk about is the network multiplier effect that we employ. Now, there's an AI company we're working with, very great technology, can't crack a single state government contract, don't know who to talk to, can't get in front of the decision makers, and they're fantastic. They just don't know how to get there. Through our networks, we got them very quickly access to decision makers in 49 states plus DC. For those who don't know, there are only 50 states in the United States. And that's not just about having a Rolodex. It's about having pre-vetted, established relationships that are built over decades. The kind of relationships where when you call and say, I have something you need to see, they take that meeting. You know, we say knowing is half the battle. The other half is execution. Another case study for us is a fast-growing international cybersecurity firm seeking US market entry. And we didn't just give them a strategy document, pat them on the back, and wish them luck. We secured co-working space within a cybersecurity-focused innovation hub, giving them immediate physical presence in the United States and connectivity to local resources. We gave them tailored mentorship on market dynamics, on the procurement process, on sales strategy. We facilitated access to key ecosystem players like corporate partners. Again, your point is fantastic. You have to partner with the right people if you want to leapfrog ahead of your competitors. Government agencies, corporate partners, universities. We orchestrated business development and matchmaking that resulted in actual real meetings in person with prospective buyers and R&D collaborators and integrators in both the commercial and the federal sectors. And you know what? Within months, they had their initial US customer base, and they were deeply integrated in the local cybersecurity system. And that's tech, but we also work with major manufacturers. They just want to establish a manufacturing facility. And that evolved into a sophisticated full-cycle U.S. market entry strategy. So we help them navigate all the complex state and local incentive programs, facilitating direct engagement with the state and federal agencies, identifying suitable sites, connecting them to local suppliers, key partners, and also establishing partnerships with local universities and workforce development programs. So you're truly integrating into the community, drawing from local resources and local talent. And this kind of profound transformation occurred when their mindset shifted from viewing international expansion as mere revenue diversification. And they saw it for what it was, platform scaling. They're not just selling existing products in new geographies, they're building brand new capabilities, advanced manufacturing capacity, integrated supply chains, and robust talent pipelines, which in this environment in America is better than it ever has been for companies coming into the country. That's unlocking new categories and is completely transforming their valuation. So I just want to say that international expansion isn't a theoretical exercise. You want to have an intimate understanding of local ecosystems, power structures, and unwritten rules, to be frank. You need cultural intelligence, you need the right partners, you need hands-on execution. For those of you who pay attention to the military, you know the wars aren't solely won from airstrikes. You need boots on the ground. You need people who go beyond advice and high-level strategy decks, but who are your white-glove, full-service partners embedding with you to ensure flawless execution at every step of your journey.
I'm still thinking about this 49 out of 50 states and what happened for this one. Why?
Well, the one state was a state where they were already making inroads. They were already talking to them, so they didn't need us for that one. We got the other, but they couldn't get any more. I said, let me get you the other 49 in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
But you said my mom, we came back with a 99 out of 100. She'd say, hey, what happened at one point?
Yeah, that was a joke. Miti, do you also want to share some of your use cases that you worked on?
Yeah, I think I'll talk about one specifically. Look, I think I see a lot of, to take a more macro view, there's a lot of fatigue on all fronts from investors and sometimes founders. And ultimately, as an investor, you're only a buyer because you're a seller. And sometimes founders tend to forget this. And the market also tend to forget the liquidity isn't there for a number of reasons. Founders fool themselves in what their mission is. But if you have taken institutional money, you have to give it back. And that your goal as a fiduciary duty is actually to make sure that the value of the company increases and you're not there just as a pet project just to build something cool. So in this particular context, there's one that I'm working on at the moment, which is a company I sit on the board of. In the AI drug discovery space, a lot of capital has been plowed into the company. They went from actually wanting to create, on the back of a very compelling machine learning platform, a suite of therapeutics. And then the funding market for therapeutics has gone really under the last 3 to 4 years. So we had to pivot. And then the pivot was actually the following. Is like, first of all, there was a market pull for the actual platform from large pharma because they wanted to accelerate their own compounds in their trials. So that was the first indication that we said, how about we just cull our own pipeline for the time being, and we just focused on just servicing existing pharma, and that's annual recurring revenue in the millions. On the back of which, actually, a larger company backed by Sequoia came and said, we would love to acquire a company. So this company is actually now going through an acquisition process, on the back of which there'll be a listing. So I'm navigating the acquisition as we speak and negotiating the terms. But this is like really an N out of many more, and then the three of us have seen many of this. There's a question that I see here in the chat, like how early do you see a sign of a deep tech startup, even pre-early or before Series A, as a attractive M&A opportunity? It's out there. I think the most important thing is to be able to prove that you're adding value to, call it society, to the market that you're serving, at which point in time somebody will come, even if you don't have revenue, if there is validation that they can see that they can add your tech stack to their value chain, whether it's upstream or downstream, then you have a clear view for integrating that. And people are willing to pay multiples that are completely uncorrelated from the revenue that you're making. If they can see that that could be a multiplier to their own revenue and to their own growth, then you name the price, and then people are willing. Then it's a negotiation. In quantum computing now, there are things that are happening where the exits are in the billions, where there is zero in revenue, there might have been like anything between 0 to 100 million that has been invested. AI is a completely different game now. We're paying actually single individuals tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, in salary for that exact thing. So the market is there. The investors are actually a bit annoyed and tired. It's extremely hard right now to capture the signals from the noise, and there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of hype, and founders feed into that to be able to take and attract money. But execution is where things fail.
Actually, I mean, here it's actually like the right moments and when you can actually sell. It all depends on the broader like trends and economic context. What's happening actually? Like if the company that you're working on, the technology that you are working on, fits certain trend and you're unlocking something. Let's say everyone understands that there is a transition. Like for example, on the example of GPU audio that I explained, everyone understands that cars moving to software defined everything. So it's like laptop on wheels. That's the future of cars. And only Tesla is somewhat there. And a lot of companies, they just don't have technology to move everything, all the processing on some centralized computational platform. And for example, like sound, only one company can do that. And when you come to all the potential partners and clients with a very specific tailored pitch, as your question, Jenna, it's the outcome-based pitch. You're basically saying to them, like, you are dreaming about software-defined audio, but how in hell are you going to do this? Like, you can't, you don't have tools, but we have. And then you have something that resonates with them because, like, that fits into their narrative that they already bought themselves. They're working on that. They're dreaming about that. They reported this to their boards, and basically now you have like pretty good environment for the acquisition. And opportunities like that, they are not always there. But if you've been working on something useful, this is where the narrative craftsmanship can come into play. So you can find like things that will resonate with your partners and buyers. That's why are they buying you? Like they're not buying you because of revenue. You really need to, like, if you're selling a deep tech company, you need to separate yourself from you're buying like revenue that is right now already present in the books. You're buying the future, the opportunity, the synergy. But you need to be realistic. Like if the synergy is there, you need to properly describe it, and then you will be able to sell it, especially if you have competitive process. If there is like, if you're just dreaming, if it's a pipe dream, you won't be able to sell. But so you need to really understand the broader context of the market.
Guys, I'm listening to you right now and thinking, what differentiates you as a team? Because you all have very different backgrounds and you're from different countries, and then right now you're working together. And can you summarize what exactly you're doing for companies, and then probably your secret sauce and maybe the core expertise? Because there is so lot of different industries, and you actually named these companies, they also from different industries. Maybe there is one common rule what exactly you can help with to portfolios of family offices. I would be very happy if you can summarize it.
Maybe let's start because I'll be very short, and then these very polished guy can elaborate. I think for us, I think the commonalities, it's all about the Benjamins. It's about US dollars. Like where can we find the alpha and the asymmetric payoff for investors and also founders and companies? And it comes in three ways. One is accelerating the commercial traction. The second one is unlocking liquidity whenever it's possible. So it's either through finding pockets of intellectual property or technology that you can carve out so that you can actually, for a specific region or for a specific market, and then you have a license agreement in place, and then you get some cash out. And the last one is timely M&A. And the M&A cycles, I think now I'm quite looking forward to seeing how the entire M&A market in the US will pan out, which will then sort of have a trickle-down effect on the rest of the world. But the M&A velocity will probably pick up again. We're seeing it already, but that will then instill more cash into the system. And then there is public market, but there's everything in between. So where we intervene is to find alpha and asymmetric payoff for institutional investors, family offices. As a family office, actually, a lot of them have invested a lot of their money no longer through funds because let's call it spade a spade. The DPI of most funds is zero. So this,
Very
real
bad. Yes.
So I think where family offices have then put their own money because those families on the initially they build businesses. They are entrepreneurs first of all, and now you're seeing like they're locked with huge positions in companies, private companies, and they want just to get out because they can use that in more productive means, either by putting it into private equity positions or just for the sake of using it for philanthropy or whatever. But at least it's not this blend of they're doing it for charity, but they invested in a commercial venture and then it became charity because the founder decided that there was nothing else to do with it. So this is where we intervene. It's all about the Benjamins.
But I would add one thing. Mitzi humbly admitted the fact that he's Cambridge educated bioscientist, and that's actually a unifying theme. I'm an engineer. Mitzi understands technology deeply, but we have both operating experience because Mitzi had already 3 companies of his own. And I also had my entrepreneurial experience, but we work with companies as entrepreneurs. We have entrepreneurial mindset, and we also deploy our own capital. So we have risk-taking mindset of investors. But both me and Mitzi, we have experience with capital markets, and Marcus will tell about him in much more polished way. I won't even attempt this. But what unifies us is that we are more. We look through the lens of investors and entrepreneurs. We're not investment bankers. Though I specifically told that I wasted 10 years of my life in investment banking because you realize that when you would like to make a difference, you're just crafting some stories, but you're not involved in the execution of the business. And fundraising, financing is a derivative from business. You need to be involved in business if you would like to improve your outcomes with respect to exits. So just like you're looking at the business and you're like, guys, you need to do that before you need to sell. But as a banker, you can't say that. It's you will lose a client, you will lose a deal. You're selling whatever shit you have to work with, and this is not the game I wanted to play. So when we advise, we build this skill set for ourselves, for our portfolio companies. But when we advise, we're looking through the lens of founders and investors because we understand how it's supposed to be. So we look at this more broadly from the perspective of the company, how to maximize the outcome for the company. And investment bankers, they're basically like crafting narratives from sidelines. And that's not the game that we believe is relevant.
I also have a question regarding the filter for companies. I definitely am sure that you filter out a lot of opportunities. And what is the differentiating factor? How do you see that, okay, so this is the company you can help, and this is the company that you probably don't want to work because of a number of reasons?
Well, I want to go back really quick to what you were saying just now. Again, you made some really great points. But to your point of how to spot and carve out opportunity, part of it is evaluating the company itself. Because every company, as someone said earlier, they asked about different sectors, different industries, and how that might play in the current environment. But the overall thing for everybody in every industry, in every sector to understand is not whether international expansion is going to transform your portfolio. It's going to do it. It's whether you'll be positioned to capture that value from the transformation when it happens. And one of the biggest mistakes we're seeing, to your point, is they look at it as sort of generic copy, paste, and exercise. They think, well, this worked here, it'll work again somewhere else. And it's not a copy, paste exercise. It's a very highly localized and deeply cultural, and I have to emphasize this, operationally intensive endeavor. And if you don't look at it that way, it's going to cost you tremendously. And I've seen this happen with some of the smartest people. It's going to cost you tremendously in terms of wasted capital and missed opportunities and damaged brand reputation. There's a saying, and then that leads to the next point, which is in Chinese, we got a saying which says, 猛虎不及低头虫, means the mighty tiger can be defeated by a local worm. And that means you need to find the right partners when you enter these new markets, because there's a lot of blind spots, a lot of arrogance when you enter with a copy-paste model. Especially when I'm telling UK companies, for example, you're going into the US. If a UK company is going to Tanzania or India, they're probably be on the alert. They know it's a different world, right? They know they might expect to face issues with foreign partners and regulations and relationships. But when they come into America, it's like the spidey signal is turned off because they think this is the most famous market in the world. It's got some of the smoothest talkers and the fattest checks. They got people who speak fluent English. It's got a shared cultural history. It's got a special relationship. It's extraordinarily easy to be lulled in a false sense of complacency, underestimate the vast cultural differences, the enormous challenges that exist. So to avoid being exploited, so you're not the mighty tiger who's beaten by the local worm, you have to find partners who have that track record, who can articulate a clear competitive audit, who can do the market evaluation, competitor evaluation, and strategic plan. And that is something that I have to say at Coda Global Ventures, that is what my partners and I strive to do.
I think that we haven't talked enough about exit opportunities here today, and maybe you can also share some ideas about that. And also, to our listeners, I want to encourage you also to ask questions because it's time for Q&A session. But maybe, Evgeny, maybe you can share some thoughts about deep tech companies exiting, and then what could stop them or, potentially kill the exit.
Yep. But first, I would like to say a couple of words about the carve-out opportunities. So with carve-outs, it's from, again, in deep tech, from a standpoint specifically in deep tech, sometimes you have just assets that are valuable but completely misaligned with the direction of the company that you decided to take. So you're moving in one direction, but there is like some technology that was created just in case, or like it's valuable, but if you will try to execute against this, it's completely different vision, and it's much better to have a separate team, separate balance sheet, and a separate company. So when you're looking at everything that is created, sometimes like you can see, like you can spot organizationally from asset structure, you can see like completely misaligned parts that are trying to move in different directions. It's actually sometimes pretty clear. Oftentimes, if there is an opportunity like that, it just like jumps on you. Getting back to the last question about what kills the exit opportunity. So you just need to look at what is the thesis, like why someone will buy this. They want to integrate this into whatever. Let's say, for example, High Point, the company that we, the first investment of our syndicate that we sold, enabling technology, hydrogen fuel cells for aviation, for zero emission aviation. So you're selling the technology because it's a clear vertical integration strategy. So your buyer will integrate it into like a broad stack that then will be applied to zero emission aviation, and maybe someday there will be hydrogen fueled planes flying. Right now they're already flying, but only like as a test, waiting for approvals. But basically, like what could prevent this from happening? Like if your technology works, the biggest problems will be rights on your IP or any factors like that. So when we've been selling the company, I can't go into much detail, but basically we had to re-sign because that was a startup. No one thinks about these things when you are like quickly developing things. But we had to chase people who worked for the company like 5 years ago to sign release of claims and IP assignment agreements that they forgot to sign. So otherwise, your buyer will, okay, like who developed this tech? This is critical, this patent. Like I see people here on the patent, let's say. Who developed this? And then you realize that you forgot to sign some paperwork like 3 years ago, and there is a potential claim. And these potential claims is just one reason. It's not like the most critical, but people forget about this. People forget about this, or like stories that Mitty can tell. Sometimes, like let's say you spun out of the university, and when you've been spinning out, you didn't think through what rights you would like to give to your university, and your university like got too much rights, too many of them, and basically they will block any deal they don't like. and sometimes their incentives are misaligned with yours. Or some of your professors who develop the technology has some agreements with the university that basically gives them preemptive rights and like huge rights on any IP he developed anywhere outside of his main work. So when you're trying to sell something, and if you didn't think this through originally, you will deal with all this shit during the acquisition process, and you don't have time. And you don't have time, and you would like to sell as quickly as you can. And also, the problem again, the problem of timing. And the problem of timing sometimes, if you're like a technology company, in the TV show Silicon Valley, they explained it like the best. If you are pre-revenue, you're actually worth more. So if you're deep tech pre-revenue,
yeah, it's better.
Yes.
It's like the old saying, Evgeny, it's like better to be quiet and be thought of as a fool than to open your mouth and confirm it. But I'm kidding. No, these are absolutely. I mean, this is and yeah, and I can follow up on your point too, just about the exit opportunities. You're absolutely right. I mean, you're talking about looking at the potential of these companies, not just where they are now, but where the ball is going. And if you're looking at acquisition, who's your ideal acquirer? It's often going to be a multinational, right? And those multinationals are going to prioritize technology that can scale globally across multiple markets and sectors with minimal friction. So you're thinking about if your company solves a global problem, it's a challenge that's faced by multiple regions, not just one. If you've already got early cross-border traction, you've got pilot projects, you've got partnerships, you've got regulatory approvals, maybe in the EU, US, Asia somewhere, that signals scalability. If you've had those conversations or MOUs, if you can identify strategic gaps globally, you say, the corporations or governments abroad lack equivalent solutions to yours, and that creates a sort of acquisition urgency, and they need that. You can fill that gap, and no one else can. If you've got IP, as I said earlier, that is exportable, it's not tied to local infrastructure, it doesn't require a regional supply chain. It can be brought to multiple markets with minimal changes. If you've got an IP moat, if you've got patents or proprietary tech that's hard to replicate. I talked to someone recently, and he has a product that was created in the UK, but he has filed for all the protections inherent in his product and his design in America and in China and in many other regions. And his business partners at first thought he was crazy for spending that kind of money and time doing that. But as time has gone on and the market has shown that there's a tremendous demand for what he is selling globally, he looks like the smartest person in the room because he thought of that before anyone else did.
This is very important what Marcus is saying, because, and again, that also ties nicely to the notion of proper timing. Once you show that it could scale, you build all these partnerships, everything that gives the credibility to the claim that it's a global market, and you have everything, you've shown everything. If you're going to sell once you have these validations, because if you're going to wait, and again, in a different example, if you have initial validation that technology works, and it could get to like wide adoption if you just implement it in the supply chain of one of the biggest players who are already in the market. If you already have enough validation, sell when you just got them. Because if you wait, let's say it's your specific barriers, you just can't scale as a standalone company and your revenue like flatlines. But you see this huge synergy and huge potential. But with the 3 years of flat revenue, it's really hard to sell all these synergies. You're saying like, guys, but just if we just integrate it into your distribution channels, it will explode. Like, or in your supply chain, you see all this additional savings that you're gonna get. Like if you just expand to your whole broad lineup. It's really hard to sell that if you already have historicals that don't support that, and sometimes it's very stupid because like the thesis is there, but people just look at very superficially. So just to summarize, like momentum is very important. But if you are going to sell once you have all the pieces in place to substantiate the thesis that gives you the most value, but don't wait. It's also that ruins a lot of deals. People just wait too long, and then you're just already stale company.
I think this is where the mindset shift comes as well, because technologists are purists. They see things they take like extrapolate over 10, 20, 30, 50 years, and they idealize what the technology could do, which is actually great because you need the almost like extended time without much feedback loop so that you can work on things more meaningfully. Where we live in a world now where the feedback is constant, actually, for better or worse. And a lot of the innovators and inventors actually, while they are fully focused on the intellectual property, I think there are steps that every deep tech company or medtech company. Eric is actually a very prominent medtech consultant out of the US. So he has helped a lot of companies. So you have the scientific or technological risk that you need to solve for. Without that, then you don't have a company because you don't have intellectual property. And it's as true in medtech as it is in deep tech because nobody will acquire you, and there's no even point like starting that. Otherwise, you don't call yourself a deep tech company. The second one is actually the technical risk, where yes, it could be solved, and then you get embedded into a company, and then they take that. And then the third one, which is like regulatory, which is an interim step, which happens in some markets. Some markets, not only in medtech, but also in other markets where it's highly regulated. Automotive is one, and obviously it's not the case for like in situ audio, but as driverless cars become a thing, everybody wants entertainment because nobody will be driving. So everybody will have their own unit, for instance. And then the third one is commercial. So this is where you need to go through the first, which is scientific and technological risk. You need to have solved for that. The second one is technical. You probably need to have covered that a good portion of it. If there's a regulatory one, I see a lot of, especially in medtech and deep tech now, in some cases, they want you to have de-risk that so that they can take that and then put them into their distribution channels. So Eric here is asking, why not, have the acquirer scale in international markets? Absolutely, but the first market at least needs to have a rubber stamp. So if the FDA is the one, then you want that to have so that they can plug that, see the revenue, and then they can see how they extrapolate to the other markets. There's this other question around, what are some of the liquidity challenges in emerging markets? Look, it's very hard. Like if you have a piece of IP or a company that is like focused on a specific geography, and Marcus is an expert at this, unless you scale it globally, then if you're from emerging markets and you haven't proven yourself elsewhere, your exit multiple either is inexistent or will be very tiny because the buyer pool in those markets isn't there. And the liquidity pool, by way either of an acquisition or like a stock market exit, isn't there either. So I think this is where really scaling global platforms is the name of the game, or getting bought out as soon as possible once you've done the homework on de-risking technologically, scientifically, technically, and then pre-commercial.
I think
Moving to the right market is crucial. Moving to the right market because you get access to local to the right market, capital market, and that makes all the difference. And in our portfolio companies, we've done it several times. And right now, we're considering one medtech company, and in this specific niche of medtech, surprisingly and paradoxically, but to get FDA approval in this particular medical device is easier in the US. FDA is much more straightforward in this particular FDA regulation is much more straightforward for this particular niche of medical devices than what the European Union has. So in this case, like everything ties together. Like it's the right market from distribution standpoint, it's the right market from regulatory standpoint. So it's much easier to get an approval there. It's just like the right market, and it also much easier to raise if you work in this market. Right market. If you're starting somewhere where there isn't enough supply of capital, just move. You're not a tree.
Yeah, I think that this was the follow-up question, Evgeny, when you said, when you were explaining about exit, Eric asked why not to let acquire scale on the international markets, and that actually this is very interesting.
But Marcus, apologies in advance if I will butcher your points, but to have validation early that you can actually work and you can actually scale somewhere outside of your home market is very important. This is basically proof of concept. Just show that you can do that this actually works. And it depends on the product, and that depends on what we are talking about. For example, scaling Starbucks is not the same as scaling like some device that is applied somewhere in the supply chain of automotive market. It's completely different things because like if you consumer products, it's so different for every local market. and it's not actually like directly scalable. You need to invent, and you need to adapt, and you need to tailor to the taste of a specific market. But if you're selling something that, technology, let's say deep tech, thing that I understand, you show that sometimes you specifically sell with the synergy in mind that your buyer will scale internationally, and you don't concern yourself with that. You just show how you can be integrated with them, and that would be your whole, proof of concept. Initially, you just show them that you could be applied in their supply chain. Let's say it's vertical integration, and they're buying you to save some cost or like advance a certain area of their own product. You just show that, and you don't need to do any international expansion. But if you're talking about companies of likes that Marcus was talking about, it makes sense to have this proof of concept that you can actually do that before you command a higher value, because sometimes it's just like not realistic. Sometimes you can do that. So the investors and your potential buyers, they will be very skeptical if you didn't show.
I honestly think that that is the question regarding cases where big corporates are looking for a solution, and then you don't need to prove anything or show anything. I mean that some companies are buying or acquiring companies on other markets because they see that they already have traction, they already built a solution,
Yeah.
try to copy it, right?
So, yeah, absolutely. That's something we're doing right now, actually, on both ends. So on one hand, we're working with a private equity firm who's evaluating deals in their pipeline and evaluating from an international perspective. Before they even think about acquiring a stake in the company, they want to know, does this have runway around the world, or is it confined to regional market? So that is part of the due diligence that we at Coda Global Ventures are conducting for them. On the flip side of that, to Evgeny's point, it doesn't make sense to destroy deal leverage by engaging with those talks with potential acquirers to scale you internationally before you've actually proven out your model. So what we're doing with another company is saying they want to be acquired. They don't want to spend the time and the energy for various reasons, to scale globally. But what we're doing for them is getting them that assessment and starting to scale them in different markets, because that's going to show the end result of this. The ideal scene is to show to these acquirers that, look, we're not just a local regional tech company. We have a tremendous runway around the world. We have tremendous potential. Automatically, it unlocks tremendous liquidity for them, unlocks value for them. They're going to sell at a much higher price than they would have before we entered the chat to help them look at their global ambitions. So really, it does help on both sides.
I think that brought us to end of our conversation today. And I think it was really very insightful. And right now I have a clear picture of how you can help portfolio companies of family offices and then Series B plus companies as well. Probably the last point that we want to highlight, how to find you guys and how to work with you.
So I'm at Marcus at codaglobalventures.com or codaglobalventures.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find my smiling face there. But would love to talk to PE firms, VC firms, ambitious scale-ups that are looking to unlock their potential internationally. Thank you.
Great. I think that
271.vc, 271.capital. We have forms. You can contact us through them or just LinkedIn. Just drop us a line, me or BT, directly on LinkedIn. We read and we answer.
Great. I will be also happy to connect any of my community members directly with Evgeny or his partners. And I'm super grateful for this session and very happy that you joined me and then answered all these questions. And just want to mention that I'm hosting these webinars once in a month. Next will be about raising capital from family offices in GCC if you're first or second time fund owner, like fund founder. And then also in September, there will be a webinar with all government-related entities in United Arab Emirates, with ADIO, with Hub 71, and with one very famous fund, RSA Capital, with only one LP, which is government. And we will talk about why it is still a great time to launch your operations in GCC. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, Genia. Thank you, Mithy. Thank you,
Thanks,
Evgeny.
everyone.
Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.